She gives me a call about a week and a half after those Olympics are over and says, "Hey, have you heard anything?" I said, "No, I haven't heard anything." And she said, "Well, the IOC is meeting today to determine whether to reallocate or vacate the position, meaning move me up to gold or not." Literally, the second she finished that statement, um, she goes, "Oh my God, the news just hit the wire. You're the Olympic gold medalist." And
I'm going to have Adam introduce himself a little bit, and then we'll get into it from there. So, Adam, tell us a little bit about yourself.
yeah, from thanks, Trent. It's good to reconnect virtually here. I am a three-time Olympian. That's probably, I guess, what I'm best known for at some level. In the shot put, I found the shot put after getting cut from the baseball team in eighth grade. So there's a story there we could probably touch on at some point. Trent and I met when we were rooming together in California. In fact, he moved into my old room under the stairs, in the closet under the stairs. We were both Harry Potter for a while. After three Olympics, I went to grad school at University of Virginia, Darden School of Business. And since that time, I've been in entrepreneurial endeavors. I've just stepped away from being an athletic director at a K-12 school in Atlanta, and I'm actually just about to start up a new maybe a new couple of ventures here. So looking forward to that.
Well, I think our story is unique from the beginning, so I'm going to say it. Yeah, a little bit from my standpoint. I moved up to Palo Alto, and somebody said you could take over my room for $120 a month, and I got to the room, and it was this underneath, as he said, the stairs, a closet that you just tucked in your sheets into both sides of it. And what's unique about Adam is about every morning at 5 a.m. there'd be this big heavy steps coming down the stairs, and I always wondered who it was, and I hadn't met Adam yet. And about the first week after living there, I finally came in at night, and there's this big guy sitting in the living room, and it's you. And I said, what are you doing waking up so early in the morning? And you go, "Oh, I got this Olympic development program through Merrill Lynch where they pay us full time and we do this." And I was like, "Well, I don't want to work at a running store, so get me that job." And so you were my first job, and it was a result of me getting woke up by you every morning at 5 a.m. to get down there.
It was the
And
old
then,
theory, Trent, of early mornings get you out earlier in the afternoon, so you had more time to train, right?
yeah, and then the second crazy story I'll say about that house, about us too, is athletics can be incredibly frustrating and a lot of highs. And one day we finished a meet where I had kind of like hit a plateau, and I was a little frustrated, and I slapped the shower door of a house built in the 50s, and the thing just shattered. And I'm about 140 pounds at the time, and completely naked, blood when it hits water spreads everywhere, so it looks like it's literally a bath. And Adam hears it from the living room, and he goes and he just gently picks me up with both of his hands and puts me outside the shower as I had nowhere to step. There's glass everywhere, and that's the little thing. So we've definitely had some good memories back in the
Mm-hmm.
day. But you know, let's get into the podcast specifically. As you graduated college and you went to throw for Nike, and you're throwing around some coaches. God, I mean, I see all the success that we are surrounded by at the time. Um, but talk a little bit about what made you leave Dartmouth, Ivy League school, and say, "Hey, I want to keep throwing professionally." Like, walk through that to get started.
That's a great starting point. I think all of us, every athlete has been influenced by a coach, and can really trace that back to probably one or two or three conversations that happened. I already referenced this. I found track and field because I got cut from the baseball team. And at the time, most people would have seen that as a major failure. And for me, I didn't realize it was an opportunity that was really presenting itself. I was lucky to go to Dartmouth, where I had a guy named Carl Wallen who was the throws coach there. And very early on, he used to sit me down usually after I was getting into some trouble. But he'd sit me down and said, "Adam, you have a gift." And he said that, I don't know how many hundreds of times throughout my collegiate career. I played football as well, so I was only really with track for 6 months out of the year. And but he'd sit me down and just say, "You've got a gift. You've got a gift." And I was going through corporate recruiting, and when you go to a school like Dartmouth, all the big Fortune 500 companies come there to recruit you to come to New York or Boston or San Francisco, wherever. And hopefully the theory is that you're smart enough to get into it and perform at an Ivy League school. You'll be smart enough to perform for them. And I remember I was in my last on campus corporate recruiting interview with a consulting firm. And I remember stepping into this office. It was the worst time slot ever. It's like a 4:30 time slot on a Friday. It's like the death spot. Like, it's like, okay, this is not going to be good to begin with. But I step in, and this guy that's on the call is that I'm interviewing with is on a phone call back to his office, and he is just having a bad day. You could tell. And so I'm waiting outside. I can hear everything he's saying. He sounds absolutely miserable. And he hangs up the phone, opens the door. He may not even hung up the phone, but the door opens, and he waves me in. And he sits me down, and he says, he hangs up the phone, and he sort of takes a deep breath to regroup himself. I've been waiting for about 2 minutes for him to finish up this call, and he starts to introduce himself. And for some reason, something just clicked, and I heard what my coach was saying at that moment. I know that sounds like it was just an incredible moment where just sort of my world sort of like just got really clear. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, man," he said what he said as his opening. I said, "I just want to say thank you for your time. And I've just realized this isn't for me." I literally got up and walked out of that room and went to find my college coach, Carl Wallen. And he was sitting in his office, and he saw me in my suit and all this other stuff. And he just starts laughing. And he's like, "Okay, let's figure this out." And so that's what prompted a move across the country and really doing some big things to change the way that I was structuring and focusing on my training. And that's where I ended up in California and training for the 2000 Olympics.
So you go, I'm not going to go corporate life. You did get a good job at Merrill Lynch where they helped you support you. Nike contracts that time. What did Nike offer you?
So I didn't get a sponsorship from anybody. From '97 through 2000 until the Olympic trials, I made $1,500 in track and field, and that was after getting third place at the Goodwill Games in 1999. I got my first contract after the 2000 Olympic trials, after winning the Olympic trials, and Nike said, and it was a base contract, and it was one of those things where I wasn't really educated enough on the profession of track and field. Someone gave me a contract and said, "Hey, you're an Olympic athlete now. This is what we pay shot putters. And by the way, you can make money doing this." And I was like, "Really? You can make money doing this? I've been living under the stairs. I've been living in garages. I'm America's largest house guest, wherever I could find a free place to live close to a training center or whatever. And now you're going to pay me to do it." And so I was thinking I was going to just do it through 2000. And so I didn't really ask a lot of questions. I accepted the contract that was given me. And that was probably a huge mistake professionally. And in fact, that was a huge mistake professionally. I had things that weren't in that contract that I found out later were standard parts of contracts, and things like rollover bonuses, where it's basically a performance-based bonus or salary raise for the next year based off how you did the year before. I didn't have any of those things. So I basically made $15,000 guaranteed a year from 2000 through 2004. And with bonuses, I could do a lot more than that, but it was basically eat what you kill.
Your 50,000 base contract was
15. 1 5.
It was 15,000 more than mine. So you had that going for you.
Yeah.
Which is good. So this is about when we met. So you go into Olympic trials, you win Olympic trials, and you go to the Olympics. What happened at those Olympics?
God, I had a bad day. It's interesting. Like I had the world lead that year by almost, I think it was over half a meter, so about 2 feet, and was coming back into form mentally and emotionally. Like, was feeling really strong, and I was at the last meet. So let me back up for a second. After the Olympic trials, you go to Europe and compete to try to make money, and so that year, the shot put was part of what they called the Golden League at the time, which is the largest track meets in the world. And to win a Golden League meet, you end up if you won a Golden League meet, you made about $15,000 to $20,000 each meet. there were 6 of them that we were competing in. If you win all 6, you qualify for, or you win your share of the Golden League jackpot, which is $1 million in gold bullion. And anybody that wins all 6 gets them. I went into my 6th meet. It was in Monaco. And I didn't even know that this was going on. Again, I was so green behind the ears on what this was. And I was really just focused on the Olympics. And I was doing these meets just to stay in shape and prepare for them. And this reporter stops me before I go into the meet. And he says, "Hey, you're still in the running for the Golden League jackpot. You got the golden bib on. Are you super excited about that?" And I was like, "Man, what is that?" And he tells me about the Golden League jackpot. And the truth was, this was the first time the shot put had ever been included in that too. So part of it was not just my own ignorance. It was just, well, it was really my own ignorance. Let's be honest. And so I go to that meet and I rolled my ankle like literally 2 days before. I was in incredible shape. I literally had the best practice of my life. Was throwing, and I didn't throw far like this in practices on a regular basis, but I was throwing over the world record. My shortest throw of the day was like 25 centimeters farther than the world record at the time. So about 23.40, so 76 feet, 76.5 or something like that. And I felt really, really great. And I rolled my ankle and I step in there. I was like, "Oh man, this is horrible." And I get second. And a guy named Yuri Belanov beat me there. And we'll come back to that later. But
Yeah, that's a name we'll remember.
yeah, so then I get to Sydney. I go down to Sydney, and the short version of that is I still wasn't 100%, but it was really no excuse. I showed up and I just had a bad day, and I really couldn't explain it. But when I went back and sort of did my debrief with my coach, and we sort of looked at the whole year, everything that I've been building up to was really making that Olympic team. And so it's a hard way to understand. And to make the Olympic team and the shot put in the U.S., you've got to be one of the top 3 or 4 throwers in the world, period, because we're just really deep in that event. And so, so I think part of it was just like I focused so much mentally and emotionally for 3.5 years on making the Olympic team that, afterwards it was sort of an afterthought. And I vowed that I wouldn't do that again. And that's what, and so I ended up losing by 2.5 inches in the final that day.
So you still won silver medal.
I got a silver medal, but I saw it as a loss.
You saw it as a loss.
Yeah.
How many hours a day were you working out?
So it varies. As you know, like there's 2 types of training. There's the active form and there's the passive form. And the passive form is just recovery as well, where you have to force yourself to not do anything. But I'd say on average back then I was training 4 to 6 hours a day was what it would take when, you show up at Stanford. I was training at Stanford, so I'd show up there, do my throwing, do my whatever the conditioning or speed and agility work that I would do, plyometric work or whatever, and then the lifting would usually be last. And I'd usually get out of there when I was working and training. I'd usually, show up at sometime between 6 and 5:30 and 6 o'clock to start training, and I wouldn't get home till 12 or 12:30 sometimes.
So 4 to 6 hours a day, having a full-time job at Merrill Lynch, get there, win the silver medal. Difference in pay for the gold medal and silver medal first, and then the difference in pay between being a gold medalist and being a silver medalist, contract, speaking, all that sort of thing that first time.
My agent told me that he negotiated a $500,000 sponsorship with a bank out of Boston, contingent upon me winning the Olympic gold that year. There was nothing for second. I think my contract bonuses were maybe $15,000 for a second and $50,000 for a gold. So it's a big difference. And sort of if you kind of look at the value of a gold medal and the shot put over a 4-year basis, it's over $1 million for that 4-year period. And it's feast or famine in my event. So if you don't win the gold, silver is whatever the price tag is on that meet period. There's no additional incentives there.
Yeah. And you're clearly not doing it for money anyway. So you go back to the grind for 4 more years. In the meantime, you won a couple world championships.
Yeah, so I won the 2001 silver. I got silver in 2001, the 2001 World Championship, silver in 2003, and that took us up to 2004.
So you go into 2004, and You're the best in the world going into it.
At the world leading throw again at that time, and it'd been a pretty tough year. I think one of the things that happens, Trent, and I think you see this in a lot of people, and maybe in other careers as well. But when I first started training as an Olympian, I was doing it really with an amateur mindset. Like I was doing it purely for the love, and then when I signed that contract and actually started to make money for every time I competed as well, um, my mindset started to shift, and I really started measuring myself based off how much money I was making relative to my peers. And it used to frustrate. I mean, it used to drive me crazy that here I am, the number one or number two athlete in my event in the world, um, and there would be another athlete from a different event, usually a distance or a sprinter or something like that, that was making 5, 10 times, 15 times more than me, and they wouldn't even make a final. And I remember having this conversation with the head of sports marketing from Nike for Olympic sports or for track and field, and it was one of the most honest conversations I think I've ever had with someone. And he looked at us. I mean, he was talking to a group of athletes, but he looked at us and he said, "The less your event looks like the 100th mile or the marathon, the less intrinsic value you hold to me." And I looked at it and I was like, "Wow, I'm a shot putter. I don't look like any of those things." And so his point was, that's what we sell. We sell running shoes, and so unfortunately, there's just not a huge market for shot put shoes or for shot puts. But so his message to me was, you have to find a way to be more exceptional. So if you're exceptional in a different way, we'll find more value in you. And so I was always trying to figure out how I could be more exceptional and draw more eyeballs to the event. But the other part is I started thinking, again, I was measuring success in terms of dollars. And one of the things they talk about in Olympic sports is you have to embrace the struggle, and the struggle, like that journey, like it sucks. Like there is no guarantee at all. And the only guarantee is that you've got to show up and you've got to do the work and you've got to push through the work. And that's the original promise, right? And that's the experience that I had as an athlete. So then I show up in 2004 and I'd had this distorted sort of view of how I was trying to value myself. And everything I could think about was, man, I lost out on $500,000 in 2000. I don't want to lose money on this one. And this particular 2004 Olympics was set up in a way that was perfectly, it was tailor made for me. We competed in the ancient Olympic Stadium in Olympia, Greece. So it's a relatively small venue. There are about 25,000 people there. It's incredible. If you've never been, I would suggest you guys go there. It's just a beautiful space, and it is the birthplace of the ancient Olympic Games. And we're the first event there to compete there in 2,500 years. So, and no other event has competed there. So, or 2,000 years. But anyway, that competition. So to paint the picture there, I lost the gold in 2000 by about 2.5 inches. I lost the gold in 2001. I got beat by someone in 2003 who was 2 weeks off a drug suspension, and I step into the 2004 Olympic finals as the number one thrower in the world. I've been leading for 5 rounds, and on the second to last throw of the competition, literally there's 60 total throws in the competition. A guy from the Ukraine, Yuri Belanov, ties my best mark. And it's that moment that you dream about as a kid, like when you're playing, shooting hoops in the driveway. Like, hey, 3 seconds left. This is that moment. You couldn't write this up, and so I have to step into the ring with it's the last throw of the competition. The last throw of a competition in the first competition that's been in the birthplace of the Olympic Games in thousands of years. And the tie-breaking rule goes back to the second best throw. So I have to throw farther to win, period. That's it. And so I step in to the ring, and I felt like it all clicked. And, you have those moments where the world just pauses. I can remember it was so loud, it was so hot that day. And when the shot put touched my neck at the back of the ring, the world just went dead silent. And the next thing I know, the shot put's flying off my neck, and it's going farther. And I'm watching. I'm like, I put my hands up in victory. I was like, I just won the Olympic Games in the Olympic State, in the ancient Olympics. And I was like, and then I look to my left and I see the red flag go up, indicating that I fouled again. And that was incredibly gut wrenching. Like, And I saw the guy from Ukraine start taking his victory lap, and I was shocked. I mean, I initially protested. I didn't feel a foul, but then the video showed that it was a clear foul. And what do you do in that moment? Um, and yeah,
It's
so
such a because I remember being so close to you at the time. 2001, I left track and field, got into work, went to work for the family business, full commission, and you were actually making more money than me at the time. It's like you said no, um, and it's so funny the way that you perceived what was happening, and you were achieving so much, but when you were in that moment, you looked at yourself as a failure, and I was on the outside wearing a suit and tie every day, so jealous of what you went through on a daily basis. I remember I almost became a sports agent just so I could represent you and get you what I felt like you were worth at the time. And I remember comparing myself as a basically a washed up athlete. Not that I was ever going to win a gold or a silver medal at the time. You were trying to win gold medals. I was trying to make Olympic teams at all, Olympic trials teams. Um, and so it's so unique that when you're in that moment that you were in, you felt like a failure, and all those around of you thought you were a hero. Like we would have all taken that silver medal. We would have all taken that moment. And obviously the story is going to get even more crazy as we progress. But even in that moment, gratitude, like gratitude of what we have. And now that she's 48, now it's you were doing such great things at such a high level. And it was almost like you knew 8 years before you really knew, because I doubt that time you started your kind of, you were always big on throwing clean. And at the time, the sport was somewhat of a dirty sport. And somebody was saying there's no way that you could accomplish what you accomplished without it. And I remember being like, I live with him. He's not doing anything. There's 7 of us that live in the house, and they don't do that. But your moment in time, none of that mattered. All that mattered was your own situation, right?
yeah. So to be clear, like my generation of throwers had the first generation of throwers that were mostly clean, um, in my opinion, at least in the U.S. In the countries that actually had independent testing agencies, um, and it was well known. Um, and I remember having these conversations with other athletes, but at the time saying, "Oh, this guy's dirty, this guy's dirty." I'm like, well, how do you know? Well, because they're from this area of the world, this area of the world. Um, and these people would just obsess over it. And that was not something that I spent a lot of time on. It was frustrating to know when people came back, like 2003 World Championships, I lost to a guy who had a lifetime best by over 2 feet. Um, and he was 2 weeks off a drug suspension. And he was a Belarusian athlete. And we just knew everybody from that area of the world. They didn't really have a choice necessarily, but that's just where they grew up and what they did. Um, and the guy that beat me in 2000 came from an area where his training partner had already served a suspension, so there's a lot of smoke there. And following the 2004 Olympics, like literally 48 hours after those games, after my last throw, I got a call from someone who said, "Hey, something's going on. Um, you know, don't leave Athens yet. This medal may change." And then I got a call 2 weeks later saying the same thing from someone else, and then one about 6 months later, um, saying something happened, and that was really hard. Um, and I think, like I've always, you can only control the things that you can control, and if you stress about those things and what everybody else is doing, I just seen it destroy people. And so I really tried to put on that willful ignorance and just say, look, I've got to focus on what I know and what I can control, and that's me. And that's uh, that's what you tell yourself. You know, that was when I talk about the 2004 Olympics, it's a bit bittersweet. And the reason why is I lost in a tie. And there's a huge cost to that medal. Um, Following the 2004 Olympics, I was talking to my sponsor at the time. It was Nike. And um, when we were renegotiating our contract, they gave me, in their defense, they did offer me something. Um, and it was nowhere close to what I was asking for. And I won't get into specifics on it, but their response to me was, here's 10,000, basically, here's $25,000 for a base. You've only proven you're good enough for second. And that was their words exactly. And so when I say I felt like a loser, it's because everything that you measure success off of in the sport, whether if you say medals, like some people are just happy to make the team, and that's the first big win. And when I first made that team in 2000, it's like, this is a great victory, right?
Yeah.
I felt more excited about making that team than actually winning the silver medal. It was cool to make the silver medal, but then you're like, oh, I just lost out on the gold. And that's how the whole system is sort of built around that thing. And in the US, the only medal that matters is gold. And so 2004 rolls by, and then, but I was really, it was probably in hindsight the best thing that ever happened to me, because it really changed my metric for how I evaluate success. I had to really go back to really my amateur self and say, look, I've got to love this process. I have to love this journey, and whatever the outcomes are, I will never walk off another field and say I could have or I should have, and I will. I will own the result no matter what, and I'll be happy with it, because I know that I'm going to. And so it really forced me to recommit in a way, and be really honest about it. And so I did. And in 2005, I win the world championship. 2007, I still don't have a sponsor. I go the next 2.5 years without a sponsor. There just weren't a lot of sponsors there, and the other sponsors in the shoe business at that time were saying, we don't want to pick up a shot putter because you guys are all dirty. And so, I did things. I sold myself on eBay, to Rex the talking pill bottle. I guess there's some irony there, but I just found other ways to make it work, and I did it not because someone was paying me to do it, but because I really actually loved it. And there's nothing that I would have changed about that time. And so you have this like traumatic event, because it is traumatic when you spend 4 years or 8 years of your life training for these specific moments, and they play out the way they play out. It leaves an impact, a scar, whether it's emotional, visual, whatever it is, but there's some impact, and it changes you. The context is a little bit different. You're a new person every single time. And I remember going into what ended up being my last Olympic trials as a professional. I made a cameo event at the 2016 trials, but I remember going into my last Olympic trials, and I'd actually been throwing pretty well, but my body just gave out. I pulled a groin. It took me 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, I still hadn't recovered from it, and I was doing everything I could to get healthy. And just after, so those Olympic trials happened. I don't make the team, and I'm staying at home, and London's going on. And just before the start of the London Olympic Games, I get a call from a reporter, and the reporter says, "Hey, have you heard anything?" I said, "What are we talking about?" And she said, they retested 100 samples from the 2004 Olympic Games. 3 or 4 people tested positive in the retest, and one of them was reported to be the shot putter from Ukraine. And I said, I haven't heard anything. There was an 8-year statute of limitations at the time, and I'm looking at the Olympics, and I'm like, well, August 17th rolls by, and that 8 years up. It's over. And so the London Olympics goes by, and I hadn't heard anything. And I'm just figuring to just brush it all under the rug. She gives me a call about a week and a half after those Olympics are over and says, "Hey, have you heard anything?" I said, "No, I haven't heard anything." And she said, "Well, the IOC is meeting today to determine whether to reallocate or vacate the position, meaning move me up to gold or not." And literally the second she finished that statement, she goes, "Oh my God, the news just hit the wire. You're the Olympic gold medalist." And sorry, I don't mean to. You get when you think about the meaning of these medals to the athletes, they spend, they're young usually, and so context and sort of age doesn't give them a different perspective. But that's how I found out I was the Olympic gold medalist, and that was pretty hard. You have this mixture of like excitement and then loss, and so you really have to. It really challenges sort of why you did what you did, and it took me a long time to figure out why, and to get comfortable with that. It was a year later when I met a guy from the USOPC in the Atlanta airport to exchange medals, and I joke because I literally was sitting at the food court in the Atlanta airport, and he looked at me and he said, "Did you bring the silver?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Did you get the gold?" And he said, "Yeah." And then we kind of looked at each other and said, "I don't really know what to say in this moment." He said, "I don't either." And we put them on the table and we just did this quick exchange. And it was right in front of the food court, in the food court in the Atlanta airport, right in front of Burger King there. So, I joke when I tell the stories, like maybe it came with a side of fries or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's 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 a really, it's really interesting. I got the gold medal and it just didn't feel real. And you kind of look back and you're like, man, what happened in the past 8 years before, 9 years before then, it shaped the balance of it shaped sort of the whole trajectory of those next 9 years. And so there's a lot more value in that silver. And I just remember not only feeling lost, like really confused about how to feel about this medal, um, like in the immediate term, but over just like thinking about the value of the silver. I had so much emotional sort of connection to the silver medal and what it meant to me and things that had happened since then. And now I just replaced it to the gold. It kind of sounds weird, but there was a short term there where I was like, God, the only silver lining, no pun intended, I can think about this is that the guy that should have gotten the silver medal, who got the bronze, was upgraded to the silver, and that was it. And so it didn't really feel like a win. And then you started getting more perspective on things, and you start saying, like, look, I started doing this for the values, from a values perspective. I bought into the values of the Olympic Games and integrity, and I really did. And so one of the things about me, Trent, is like I'm honest to a fault, and I will own every mistake I ever make. And I usually don't talk about my wins as much as really focus on my losses. And so that's kind of what it meant to me, was doing things the right way. And I would sort of joke and say it feels like getting a lifetime achievement award posthumously. Like,
Yeah.
there's not much value in it other than the value that, in my opinion, like the value of a gold medal in my event is really personal. And there's not a lot of external rewards or value that you can put on it. It's really personal. And so that medal to me is way more personal now than it was when I first received it. Um, so anyway, um,
You know, when your college coach told you you had a gift, and then the 12 years, 12 plus years of just grinding away every day, um, let's throw out the seven figures of income you would have made if it wasn't for a guy named Yuri from a world championships and a gold medal. Um, as you look back and you have your beautiful kids and you try to teach them about what you've learned through it, what do you think if they're on this podcast in 20 years and I'm like, tell me about this period of your dad's life, what do you want them to say?
God, I mean, that's a great question. I think you always hope that you're providing um, the model of integrity, um, values, and really like how you do things matter, not just in the short term, but in the long term. And so I think both of my kids, I hope they understand that they earned every result they get. They're not entitled to anything. Um, and sometimes you get results that um, that they don't match up what you thought they were going to be.
Yeah. Now, from a take that same thing and let's say you run into Yuri in an airport. What do you do? What do you say?
You know, it's a really great question. I don't actually have any animosity towards him. I don't like the system. Um, those guys don't have a choice, but they didn't have a choice. I mean, yeah, you could say they did, but here's the difference in the math. For me, the math was always it was very simple. Like I was never going to make millions and millions of dollars throwing the shot, but it was not worth challenging my integrity. My dad would have killed me, and I made a promise to him when I was 16 years old, and I started really enjoying power sports that I would never do steroids, and that promise was always more valuable than what the potential like upside was. But in a lot of those countries, when they say you're in, and this is what you have to do, they're also it's not just about you. It's about the rest of your life. You're guaranteed. You're set up you're going to have some sort of country government funded job. Your family's going to be taken care of. It's going to be it's life changing. And so I don't fault him for what he did. The big failure to me is still comes back to a structure like you have the anti-doping agencies. You know, they were still playing catch up, and they gave themselves 8 years to catch for the technology to catch up with everything else. But we have no way to support um, the downside of their failures, and so the one that bears the price is the clean athlete.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would probably say, hey, look, I'm not gonna lie, like I don't even know if he's still alive. He's faced a lot more challenges in his life than I ever will. I hope. Yuri was in the army in the Ukraine, last I heard. So um, that's a tough place to be right now. From my perspective, like, yeah, when we were competing, I probably hated him. But being 50 years old now, or almost 50, like you have a different perspective on it. You see that they had a different set of, there was a different calculus involved in that decision that I never had to face myself.
It's good perspective in terms of everything. Hard perspective to take. Really hard to take from that standpoint. Um, and then the other uniqueness is as all these things are happening, and you and I kind of ran close, my career took off. And then I always almost had a career that took off because I started so early because I wasn't good enough. And then all of a sudden you're finishing the Olympic trials at 2016 after your final appearance. And then you're like, all right, let's go. Let's go do a career now.
Yeah.
If you were a running back in the NFL all that time, you'd be pretty well off. But as a shot putter, you're like, all right, where am I going and how am I going to go with it? Talk a little bit about that transition into civilian life, even though you never really left it, right?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I think it's something that a lot of athletes do struggle with. So I started planning this transition really in 2006 when I went to grad school. So I finished, I got my MBA in 2008. And the theory was after the 2008 Olympics was that I was going to retire and start up a business. And I don't know if you remember what 2008 economically was like. I know you do, Trent. But it was not a great time to start a business. In fact, the capital markets had completely collapsed. I wrote this business plan, and I will tell you this, and to this day, I still actually think it's one of my greatest achievements in my life, was I got bank funding in 2008 to start a yogurt store in Athens, Georgia. And so I'm like, this is going to be a great start. Like, I found this niche in the market. There's 25,000 co-eds in Athens and no yogurt stores, and we found this really great spot. And it's the night before we're supposed to close on the space, and I get a call from my realtor at like 11 o'clock. I'm like, oh, this isn't good. And he says to me, hey, you're not going to get approved. Your building, your permit's not going, your work permit's not going to be approved tomorrow because you lost some parking spaces that they originally allocated. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the guy that was moving into the space next to you took more parking spaces on his permit, and they approved his, and so they're not going to approve yours. It's like, man, that sucks. Um, Timing was horrible, and so I ended up looking around for another location for the 2 to 3 months. My loans, I had a 6 month no interest on the loan, so I wasn't paying anything back other than principal at the time. And and when I started getting closer to the end of that time, I was like, I can't find another location, and the market's in a really bad situation here. This isn't a good time, and so you go from like you're like, oh man, I'm gonna hit the ground running here. I've got my MBA, and I'm gonna be just destroying it at with this great, cool like lifestyle business is really what I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to make millions of dollars with it, and you feel like you don't get past square one with it. It's like, man, that sucked. Um, but one of the things that I think you may remember about that, I'm a really resilient guy. And so I kind of bounced back from that. It's like, oh, it'll be fine. I'm still training and I'm in good shape, and I'll train for the 2012 Olympics. So I stayed through there. And I was doing I started connecting with different people and in Athens and around Athens, Georgia. And I got asked to write a business plan for a sports performance facility that was opening up with a orthopedic group, and I did that, and I got it up and running, and did leverage some relationships with some international federations to create a training hub there, and we really did fairly well in the first few years there. Was not really excited about that after those 3 years for a lot of different reasons, and my old agent asked me to. He was starting the American Track League at the time, and he was doing 3 televised meets on NBC and ESPN. And he needed somebody to help with that, and so I did that for that year. Really, I was just looking for these opportunities. Like, they were really just small, but I like to build things, and that was sort of my thing. Like, I love to like build a plan and work towards it, and build teams and things like that. And so I just was kind of seeking those opportunities out, and I get this call from another guy as the stuff with my agent is starting to wrap up for that year. We realized we were better friends than business partners, and that's like he's still one of our best friends to this day. We still connect very regularly. In fact, I talked to him like a week and a half ago about a bunch of things going on in the college space right now. But we just realized we're better. Like, we just didn't work well together. He had a very different model than what I did. I like to build plans and then work the plan and then make adjustments as needed. And he had a different system that worked better for him. And so I got a call to come out to Houston to help run a sports event company that raised money for pediatric cancer research and treatment. I was like, man, that's really cool because it triggers my intrinsic motivator. It's like, man, I like that. Like, that's one of the things I've always valued, which is like having a purpose bigger than just money, which is one of the things that really attracted me to the Olympic movement. And so I was asked to be a CFO, COO there, and I did that. It was a small business. When I first got there, we were about to close on the first round. Still seed round, but we were trying to edge closer towards a true first round or Series A. And when I got there, what I realized was, one, we weren't going to get the same amount of money that we weren't going to get the money that we really needed to grow. So we went from, planning to scale from 6 events to 20 events to just basically going on life support. And we kind of stayed in that spot for 3 years, and we were marginally profitable, but we were never at a level where we could really be an investable business. Again, I had another call from someone who said, hey, we need somewhere here. Anyway, I feel like I'm going through my resume rather than actually talking and answering the question. But the bottom line is, like, I thought I had a good plan. And to be quite honest, I really didn't have a real connected plan to figure out, okay, this is what I want to do next. Yeah, it was really sort of ad hoc. But I got to be honest, Trent, like I feel like I've been a part of a lot of different things. And I felt like I felt like I failed with a lot of them, but I learned more from my failures than my successes. So I feel like I've gathered a lot of experience in that regard. But anyway, yeah.
How do you take the failures and Lacey and the girls and say, like, these are good things. This is what we've accomplished because of that?
That's a great question. I think the first thing is you've got to have a family or your group of people that buy into you, and you've got to have a clear vision of what your shared values are, and shared goals are. And I think one of the things that I found with my wife is that she knows I've got an entrepreneurial spirit, and she also knows my work ethic, and that there's never going to be a decision that I make that puts the my own sort of personal ambition, if you will, before the safety and comfort of my family. So there's a lot of buy-in there, and they believe in me. Um, and I think the other part is, you know, I spent 15 years of my first 15 years of my adult life after college pursuing an Olympic career. And so when you look at kind of the last 12 years of my life, 15 years of my life, I've really been doing things that people do when they're in their 20s and 30s, and gaining those experiences with a little bit different experience curve and wisdom from the training that plays over. And so, like when we were talking about career planning, my wife and I talk about what direction we go. We talk about, obviously there's a financial stability that we have to have, but we really think about like the values that we want to have our kids to have, like we want our kids to have. We really think about like what's like money is not the end all be all for us. And I say that it sure as hell helps a whole lot. But I think so I think it's just making sure that you're everybody's aligned and understands like why you're making decisions, why we're doing this, and how it's going to benefit the whole family. And my kids have a really great aptitude for adventure. And so the moves that we've made, and the transitions that we've made, has it always been easy? No, but they've responded really well, and you see the growth in them, and it's just good. Now, if we were getting different feedback and we started seeing it was really impacting them negatively, like I would in a heartbeat change, but we haven't seen that. But I think it comes down to making sure your values are aligned with everything. So,
Do they brag about their dad being a gold medalist?
I think sometimes they forget. It's funny. My youngest daughter's in eighth grade, and she's she's like she and I were just talking. She's like, yeah, some of my friends just found out that you were an Olympian. I said, okay, how did that go for you? And she's like, they're like, your dad was an Olympic gold medalist. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, I didn't realize it was that big a deal. And I said, it's not. I'm
It's
just
a big,
dad.
it
Yeah,
is
I'm
a
just
big,
dad.
no, it's a big deal. There's a lot of people out there that wishes they would trade it all in for a gold medal in a heartbeat. To give you a little perspective, that there's a lot of people that would trade that all in. We conclude every podcast with you get to ask me a question. What do you got for me?
you know, Trent, I could ask a lot of different questions here. We could ask for clarity on some of our fun times back when we were young and stupid, but there's no evidence of any of that anywhere. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but I actually was thinking about this because I've enjoyed listening to some of the podcasts you've done, and one of the questions that came up is really more about teams, and I think you manage a pretty big team now. But what's the question that you wish your teams, your people, would ask you more often, and why?
That's a good one. You got me stumped. We have about 70 team members across the country. Um, and I would say that we try to do a really good job of making it a team versus a employer employee. Like I've whether it's soccer, whatever I've done, I've tried to build teams. It's more fun that way than doing it alone.
Mm-hmm.
The one question I wish they would ask, every once in a while it happens, where they say, what do I need to do to get to the next level?
Mm-hmm.
It's shocking how many people don't ask that in life. What do I need to do? You have obviously asked yourself that, asked your coaches that, probably asked Lacey that, all those things that you asked, what do I need to do to get to the next level? I think that when we're not asking ourselves that question, we're not being honest with what we're trying to accomplish, or even worse, we're not even aware of what we're trying to accomplish. That's scary to me if somebody doesn't know where they want to go or what they want to accomplish, where they find happiness, where they find passion. And so I've been lucky to find a group of individuals in my life that I can be vulnerable around, and that can give me perspective, a group of friends. And so asking that question, what do I need to do to go to the next level? And then the second thing I think that everybody should know, and I wish they would ask, but you can't give, is like, what are my blind spots?
Hmm.
That's hard feedback to get. Because you know, the raw stuff is easier. It's, but what are my blind spots, or what do I need to be better at? I think is really important for everybody. Um, yeah, my kids are 23 and 19 now, so they're mature to a certain extent. Think about us at 23, we'd be like, we were mature. And we were. I'm not even a mature 48-year-old, let alone a 23-year-old. But I think that's good to know, like, what are my blind spots,
Yeah.
and for your next phase, it's like, all right, how do I take everything I've accomplished and understand what my blind spots are, and take that to the next level, which is exciting for me to see, the next phase of what you're going to do, as we've talked a little bit about it. So, but yeah, I'd say that those two things would be
Yeah.
what I wish they'd ask.
I think you're hitting the nail right on the head, and it's particularly as leaders, like it's something that I've just seen in the roles that I've had. Um, is there's this really there's this real discomfort with employees or people that report into you asking that one question of like, what are you unsure about right now? And that allows you to model that vulnerability. Like if I were to ask you, what are you unsure about right now in your business? Like, and getting them comfortable with asking that question, because I've just found that allows the teams that I've worked with the opportunity to step up and fill a gap that I'm worried about, or to express interest in a problem that we need to solve, like collectively. And yeah, it's just interesting. It's a great question.
I think what's unique about that is, if you go to our sport, the greatest thing about track and field is it's not about referees. It's not about anything other than you against that person. For me, I'm getting on a line and I'm either faster than that person or I'm not. Very, very, very rarely is there anything in between, drugs being one of them, I guess. For you, it's, are you going to throw that steel ball further than somebody else? Are you stronger, more explosive, all those things? And then you go to an environment where you're like, okay, so the team. And there's parts of you that goes, well, I'm just going to go do it because I know how to win. And that just means me trying harder, or me throwing farther, doing all those things. You can't do that as you grow teams. You have to be comfortable with somebody else's failures. You have to be comfortable with your own failures, and take it more seriously that if you fail them. And so, coming from an individual sport, for the most part, you're always on teams, but in going into a team environment and building teams, it's very hard to not just step in and be like, fuck it, I'll do it.
Yeah. You hit the nail right on the head too, because that's your personality too.
Yeah. Okay, like, you're not gonna do it, I'll do it. I'll stay late. I'll get in there. Whatever. Like, I don't understand why you don't want more. And then those expectations can be hard too, because I can have too high of expectations on people sometimes, and not realize the other stuff that they're going through. I'm lucky. I got a good life. I've had a good life. I was not good enough of a runner, and that actually helped me out. And I've been lucky with my kids. They've always given me perspective and kept me grounded. And being a single dad, which isn't something that science shows is a good thing, or empirically, but it was something that made me absolutely lean in and say, like, this is what needs to happen first. And especially to a father to a daughter, such a unique relationship, and showing that unconditional love as a former athlete too, and knowing that, like, if she does well or she does bad in a sport that day, we're getting yogurt away, because if she doesn't get the unconditional love from us, she's going to go find it from somewhere else. And we don't want somebody else giving her for the wrong reasons, right? So that's a point that makes you stay true north every day with your daughters, or my daughter. Is like, that unconditional love is really important. And she calls me all the time now. It's funny, when she was in high school, I couldn't tell her anything about running. She didn't want to hear it. And by the way, she had a great high school coach, so I didn't have to do it. And even now, she's got Patty Sue Plummer as a coach. So, like, she's accomplished way more than I ever have, right? And so she's got a great mentor in Patty Sue, and so now it's but she calls me all the time. Hey, I had a great workout today. I had this. No way she would have talked to me when she was a teenager about her
Yeah.
workouts. So that's fun too, to let her come to me with her own passion around track and field, versus the other way around. I think too many parents, as you see today, are like living vicariously through their kids and wanting to push them, and for them, it's got to come from us. Your dad's not didn't he might have helped you become a better shot putter. He might have helped me become a better runner, for better or worse. But it's got to come from within.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
well, thanks for spending time with me today. I feel like we could have a 2-part series. Now I want to go into NIL and all that stuff. Time. So
Absolutely, man. Anytime.